Teachers of Reddit, what are your stories of, oh god, this child is a sociopath? I was often substituting a special needs class, 6 to 7 boys about 8 to 10 years old. The days were normally lively, but I always had everything under control, and the boys had learned to trust me, and at least try to do what I told them to. Never had any real problems, just normal stuff. Then one time there was a new boy in the class. Their teacher had written me a note that said to keep a close eye on him at all times. He had the telltale features of a fast child and small black eyes like a shark. He never showed any emotion whatsoever excluding immense excitement if someone else got hurt in any way. Few days passed without any incidents, and then, out of the blue, he stands up in the middle of class, yanks the much smaller guy sitting in front of him down with his chair from behind, and starts to pummel him in the face with his fists. I ran to intervene and grabbed him off and set him in a corner, ordering one of the trustworthy boys to run and get the principal here now. The attacker stood in the corner, emotionless as ever and completely calm. I turned to check out the crying kid on the floor, and miraculously he seemed unharmed, but was just shaken by the surprise attack. I sat down on the floor to calm him down and to help him up. Next thing I know is a shark-eye kid standing beside me and stabbing me on the leg with my teacher's scissors, the only pointy ones in the classroom. It was then when I realized why the attacked kid wasn't badly hurt. Shark-Eye was big for his age, but he had no physical strength at all. I didn't even get a bruise from his stab. My trusty Lee's jeans stopped the blade, which I instantly took from him. I threw the scissors on top of a high shelf and ordered everyone else out of the classroom to wait for the principal's arrival while I watched over Shark-Eye. Boys ran out. Shark-Eye looked at me curiously for a few seconds and sat down at his desk and continued his math assignments like nothing had happened. I asked him quite sternly what had made him attack a fellow student. Shark-Eye lifted his empty gaze and said, I heard him laughing at the school cafeteria. I thought he could have been laughing at me. Law and all, can we play football today in PE class? The boy had no empathy nor remorse. The episode meant absolutely nothing to him. When the principal arrived, we went through the situation and the class affirmed my description or events as they had happened. Shark-Eye's mom picked him up early and he stayed at home for a few days. The principal told me that this was not the first such incident and that the boy was on cue for a hospital school class. The principal commended me for my actions. I was very young at the time and was surprised that I had been able to keep my cool even after getting stabbed, even if the attempt had been pitiful. Turned out that's my teacher's superpower. I never lose it. Even when I've been spit at, got chairs thrown at me, someone trying to gouge my eyes out while holding them, more than once, etc. Luckily the years in the same school have accumulated my reputation, and nowadays it's very rare that someone even dares to try to mess with me. Not a teacher, but I only remember the story because I had witnessed the fallout. In 11th grade, there was a girl, let's call her Carol, who was crazy about the cartoon Sonic the Hedgehog. To the point where a teacher threatened to fail her on a writing assignment if she turned in yet another Sonic fanfiction. Instead of actually doing work properly, she handed in an angry letter to the teacher as her assignment. Can't remember what the specifics of that letter were, but I do remember it was such that she got suspended for the remainder of the year. When she came back in grade 12, she had to apologize to everyone in her homeroom for her actions the previous year. It's in this apology that she tells us she had a brain tumor the size of Quebec. The kid from Quebec, naturally, yells at her for comparing Quebec to a brain tumor. Edit: Carol did a lot of other stuff besides the angry letter that year. She mentioned in her apology that she got a girl in trouble for vandalism so she, Carol, could get bullied role in a school play. She dressed up as a Grim Reaper for some old person's funeral and accused my friend whom she never had any prior connection to, of tricking her into thinking the funeral was a Halloween party. Since this happened in May, the excuse was made of toothpicks. She got a 0 on a term, project for math, because she accidentally submitted a poorly written and creepy Sonic fanfiction instead of her assignment. She threw a temper tantrum to get the teacher to change the due date. Nothing came of it. And that's just the stuff she admitted to. Not a teacher, but I was in his class when it happened. This was in 7th grade, I think. The teacher asked everybody to turn in their homework, and he asked for an extension because he was absolutely swamped for the last week. The teacher said no, and instead of just being okay with it, this kid picked up a chair and yeeted it across the classroom at the teacher. It hit her on the forehead, and she had to get stitches. Kid was expelled. Had a kid that it's basically Charles Manson. Has been aggressive before. Stabbing kindergartners with scissors, hitting, biting, scratching. 1st grade began new behaviors. He would convince other kids to eat crayons, or to go tell other kids to say hurtful things to others. This was also the year he became more controlling over girls. He would invite them to play, then if they didn't do what he said he would get the group to push the girl out. The result was the girls really wanted his attention. When the girls realized it wasn't worth it and began abandoning him, he became aggressive again. This year, 2nd grade, he has begun trying to find like-minded kids and create a gang of bullies. Of course the staff are trying our best to curtail the behaviors, but the parents are very litigious. Multiple school psychologists and social workers have recommended individual therapy in social minutes, but the parents insisted it wasn't needed. They said that we were lying about the behaviors and wanted their own social services person to come in for observation. So obviously the student was on his best behavior. He is not stupid by any means. He knew what was up. The parents then used those findings to stonewall us for 6 more months. I do not believe any child beyond saving. But there are kids that really cannot be saved by public schools. This kid needs more social/psych minutes, smaller classes, and more adult attention. We just don't have the money to provide that, especially when parents want to fight us every step tooth and nail. I have an ex who is a preschool teacher and he affectionately calls his students my little sociopaths, not to their faces or parents, because that age is just, empathy is a learned skill, let's put it that way. I had honestly never thought about it, but he taught me that things like hitting is bad because it hurts people, and hurting people is not a good thing is something that kids have to be taught. Edit for an attempt at clarity that while kids have a huge range of emotions that we sometimes forget about because they can't use their words for them the way adults do, the behaviors one uses to demonstrate concepts like caring for others are a skill of sorts to be demonstrated, taught, and practiced, and it's much harder to get them to understand it when they are older, like 4 or 5. I think he said 3 is really when they start to get it, but often parents are still treating 3-year-olds like babies. My mom was a teacher for several decades, and she taught some real winners too. There's a kid a few years younger than me that she had, and she never explicitly said anything bad about him, because he was the son of one of her friends and lives in their neighborhood, but that kid was straight from a fucking horror movie. He's adopted and one of the first things he did after his parents brought him home was to shut the family dog in the refrigerator. One time he sneaked up to my parents' house in the middle of the night. We live in the middle of nowhere, so this is terrifying in and of itself, and tried to break into our house. My parents usually left the doors unlocked at night and I would go around after they went to bed and lock them. When that didn't work, he cut the electrical wiring to our outside lights, so it was pitch black outside and we couldn't see anything, and then slashed the tires on my car and tried to break the windows. He used to just beat the shit out of other kids, especially younger ones, whenever the mood struck him. That fucker is like 30 now, and he's still a total piece of shit. Like, He still lives with his mom and he's gotten her house swatted at least 5 times because he deliberately goes online into spaces where that's a thing and antagonizes people, then takes off to leave her to deal with the fallout. I'm hoping to be an adoptive parent myself one day, and sometimes I have nightmares about this kid because as far as I know, his parents really did try super hard to help, but it just never worked.